What's up? It's Tom. Thanks for clicking on this video. We're going to talk about TwinsFest. We're going to talk about the Twins Daily Winter Meltdown. Unfortunately, I'm a bit under the weather, so I was not able to make it out to either of these events, but I was very excited to listen back to some of the interviews that were available out there. There's a lot. That's the first thing I want to point out before we get into these. These are some of my highlights that I took away from some of the pieces that I've listened to so far, but there are hours upon hours upon hours of interviews out there. I will put links in the description, but there's like a 5-hour live stream on the Twins YouTube channel. There are hours of interviews available on WCCO's page. And then, of course, there's the Winter Meltdown that John and Aaron record for Gleeman and the Geek. So all that's out there. I'll put links in the description. Please, please, please treat this as sort of an appetizer and then go and dig in for yourself and all the other good stuff. And then I mentioned the Twins official page YouTube stream. There were some audio issues on there, and I did the best I could on that. I want to just shout that out. I'll give you another warning before we get to those, but I want to start with what was my favorite interview I've listened to so far, and that is Simeon Woods Richardson was so genuine and so good at the Winter Meltdown, and I really thought John and Aaron also did a really great job queuing him up and keeping him going and asking him great questions. What I want you to do is go and listen to their discussions about Woods Richardson changing his arm slot. Excuse me. I'm not going to include that clip here, but that was really fascinating and really unlocked. That was the difference from Woods Richardson being a guy who wasn't performing that well in AAA and a guy who was pitching well in the big league. So a huge turning point in his career. We got a lot of insights into how that happened. But I loved just some of his personality coming out. You could tell he was comfortable. That was the biggest thing. Simeon Woods Richardson, those guys made him comfortable, and he was feeling it with the crowd, and just his energy is great. We're going to swing it over again. This was at the Winter Meltdown.
So what was your mindset when you first got the call of you're going to jump into this rotation?
Well, first and foremost, let's help this team win,
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
Right? So that was my first initial thought was, okay, you get the call, have enough confidence to go in there and say it's your spot, mean it, believe it, and help the team win. I say it as it may sound a lot, but that's really my main priority every time I touch the ball is to give y'all guys a fighting chance to win. So every day I learned something new. Every day I had a new challenge. Every day I bounced off of the whole rotation as we sat together day in and day out, learning from Pablo, learning from Bailey, learning from Joe.
It is a good group.
It's a good group. It's a great group. So just being able just to be the fly on the wall sometimes as Pablo's throwing a bullpen, that's the stuff I take in more and say, okay, I'm part of this rotation. So let me go in and actually ask questions about what these guys are doing, because these are masters at art. So at the end of the day, I have to go in and just be a fly on the wall sometimes.
And
I love the way he put that. And that's such a cool insight into, how Simeon Woods Richardson approached being, the young guy in the rotation. They also discussed kind of what it was like once, David Festa and Zebby Matthews joined the rotation, and he kind of had to be the leader. And it's really easy to envision Simeon Woods Richardson, if he can keep developing and keep growing and keep rolling with the punches, this guy being a great mentor to young players down the road. Like I mentioned that snippet, though, there was really a big section where they were talking about his release point. I think like that is just a very informative conversation. I think like the Twins should have some of their minor league pitchers just listen to that. Because not just that, obviously not everyone's going to have to make that same kind of mechanical adjustment that Simeon Woods Richardson did, lowering his release point so much. But just hearing about his mindset and the way it, how everything kind of developed and then what he had to go through to do that and the challenges that he faced and it was just really good. Again, I encourage you to go listen to that. If you pick anything to listen to from Twins Daily Weekend, I would really encourage you to check out the Simeon Woods Richardson interview in particular. Ryan Jeffers was also at the Winter Meltdown talking to John and Aaron from Gleeman and the Geek. I was really happy. They asked him, he's been working out with Walker Jenkins in the offseason. I wasn't sure if that was going to come up because, especially Jeffers being a catcher, you can ask him so much about hitting. You can ask him so much about pitching. There was a lot of great discussion with Jeffers as well. I don't want to undersell that, but I just was blown away by the Simeon Woods Richardson interview. I was really happy they asked him about Walker Jenkins. We'll talk about kind of a suspicion I've had about Walker Jenkins in a minute, but here's what Ryan Jeffers had to say on him.
We've got a lot of interest in Walker Jenkins, but we have not seen Walker Jenkins up close. You have seen Walker Jenkins up close. You've been working out with him, I understand, this offseason. What are your impressions on him and his future? And to start with your impressions.
Yeah, he's a guy that everyone should be really excited for. It's not very often where the talent on the field matches up with the person and the intangibles that come with it off the field. He's an extremely humble young kid, but he's just so freakishly talented that it's not often you see those two go together. Just the stature, the size, just sheer size of him is just, you can't fathom him only being 19 years old.
You can't fathom him only being 19 years old. And Ryan Jeffers wasn't the only one to say something like this. This was a great panel too. This was probably my favorite part of TwinsFest that I've seen. So we're switching gears out of the Winter Meltdown, taking a look at TwinsFest. This is where some of those audio issues come up. Again, I apologize. I did the best I could. If you're listening on headphones, this might be like in one channel really hard, but hopefully it's workable. But here's what Glenn Perkins kind of made reference to how Walker Jenkins does not look like a 19-year-old.
There's just different ways that guys develop. Guys develop at different ages. Clearly, he's developed a little quicker than some guys when he's sitting here looking like he's 25. So everybody kind of matures and develops at different ages. I don't think there's any rhyme or reason to that other than genetics.
So, yeah, that's one thing that Walker Jenkins looks like Glenn Perkins put it, like he's 25 as a 19-year-old. But kind of some of that Ryan Jeffers quote leads into something I've heard a lot about him as well, is just how mature he is and how he doesn't carry himself like a 19-year-old either. And something that I kind of was thinking in the back of my mind while he was doing his draft signing press conference was like, did this guy take like media training courses or what? Because he always says the right thing. And here's a great example of exactly
what does that feel like to be just 19 years old and have such high expectations?
Oh man, it's a blessing for sure. When you get to come out here, and I tell people this all the time, I get to play baseball every day. Like how much better does it get than that? And it's like if I can go and be the best player I can be and help the team win, and that's what I want to do. So the expectations, and I feel like people expect a lot out of me, but I appreciate it. That's where I want to be. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else, and hope I can, exceed those things. So it's truly awesome, man.
So, but he's the real deal. The more we kind of hear, again, the Ryan Jeffers talking about his maturity and just how good of a young man he is, the more this is just sort of starting to feel like, no, this is just what this dude is really like. And, again, this dude at 19 is a physical freak. Royce Lewis didn't look like this at 19. Byron Buxton didn't look like this at 19. Most even 19-year-old superstar phenom, top prospect guys don't look like this at 19. You kind of have to look at them and project their body out some. No, this is, I call him a mannish boy, to use a Muddy Waters term, in last year's prospect zine. And actually, I'm working on this year's zine, and something I discovered that it hadn't really hit me yet, a fun fact about Walker Jenkins, is that he debuted at the very end. So it was only a week that he was in Double-A. But he was in Double-A as a 19-year-old. It was only a week, but we're still giving it to him. That's something that Joe Mauer did not do. That's something that Royce Lewis did not do. That's something that Byron Buxton did not do. Carlos Correa did not do that. None of those other top prospect, top pick guys with Twins ties made it to Double-A by the time they were 20 years old. And Walker Jenkins did it. Again, it was briefly at the end of last year, but he did it. And, we can expect him to start there this season. I've been driving the hype train of don't rule this guy out of making it to Target Field in 2025. I truly believe that's possible. It's not all under his control. It would kind of have to be a thing where, number one, he stays healthy, and then number two, something might have to happen on the big club to open a door to accelerate that timeline. But I think it's possible, and
I want to put
excited.
you guys in your fan shoes for a second. Kaelen, if you were attending Twins Fest today as a fan, who is the Twin you would most want to get an autograph or picture with or talk to?
Definitely Walker Jenkins.
Present company accepted.
I came here for one person only, Walker Jenkins. That's it.
That's Kaelen Culpepper. So that's and then you kind of get the sense that Jenkins is really comfortable all the time. All the guys are comfortable around him and kind of enjoy being around him. So that was just really fun. This was a great panel. It was, I think they called it like the first round pick panel or something. It was Chris Atterbury with Glenn Perkins, and then Jenkins, Brooks Lee, and Kaelen Culpepper. There was actually multiple really good questions from the crowd that I enjoyed. And one of them was asking about, the Twins' kind of developmental process. And Brooks Lee went on to talk about how the Twins have allowed him to kind of be himself and sort of carry forward what works for him instead of trying to impose sort of their systems upon him. And obviously his dad being a big-time college coach and, he has coached Team USA. So he's sort of Brooks Lee's personal swing coach too. And the Twins have been really accepting of that relationship. And it's not as if, Twins hitting staff and development staff have this big ego and are like, no, you go by our plan. So here's what Lee is talking about in that regard.
I was lucky. We got to hit on the field with my dad in Wichita. Same thing in St. Paul. And they get to learn the philosophy that I grew up around, so that when I do struggle, then they know how to fix those problems that I have in my swing. And I think that's something that's really unique to the Twins. And I don't know, when I was drafted by the Twins, it was the best thing for me because I knew I was going to a good organization that was really going to truly help me out any way that I could. And that's exactly what I got when, I'm hitting on the field with my dad at 11 o'clock before a 7 o'clock game. And the two hitting coaches are there and you have people shagging. And it just, it really, really makes the development process a lot quicker. But, the coaches also get to understand you as a player and as a person.
So basically, the Twins are very open to allowing, things from a player's past and trying to blend that in. And they're more like, let's get our AA coaching staff to understand what makes Brooks Lee tick and how we can help him, rather than let's try to impose these things upon this player. I think that's just, obviously Brooks Lee really appreciates that. And you could kind of tell by the way he was talking that he kind of could envision a different organization not being that welcoming of that type of thing. So I thought that was really interesting. There's also just a lot of good stuff that comes out in these interviews about, guys' plans for what they're working on. And this is both David Festa and Marco Raya. A couple of guys that I've thought for a long time have big league pitches, but I just not all that certain that they're going to be able to make it as starting pitchers in the big leagues, which is, you could say that about 95% of pitching prospects. So I don't want to make it sound like I'm digging at those guys too bad. But I was really, the answers that these guys gave on what they're working on. And, it's one thing to work on something and it's another thing to be able to implement it. That's what separates, major leaguers from guys that can't do it. But I thought these were great answers and these guys are working on the right stuff.
Any specific thing, like one specific thing you've been working in the off season to try to get better at, or one specific pitch maybe you're working on?
Yeah, for me, I've been working on a sinker. I think it's something that's going to help me with right-handed hitters to kind of get something that's sort of coming in and kind of establish the inner half of the plate. I think that's something I didn't do a good job of. The slider and the changeup were fine, but I think the four-seamer to righties didn't grade out as well as I would have liked. So I think the sinker, allowing something to kind of work in on a right-hander, kind of set their sights a little differently. I think that'll help me a lot.
Marco, how about you?
This offseason I worked a lot on the changeup, getting a little bit more depth on the changeup, and something going down that way, just like Festa said, going into a righty, and as well as the command early in the count. Just try to get ahead early and put them out when I can.
So yeah, Festa, I think he's got 3 legit big league pitches. I've thought that for a while, but kind of the question is can you make it as a starting pitcher? Can you get through a lineup 3 times potentially with that? And it's tough. He showed signs that he maybe can do that. But, again, I think if he adds that sinker that he's talking about, and again, guys can't kind of lean out on that slider, kind of keeping him honest, that could be a huge thing that unlocks a whole new level of David Festa. And then Marco Raya, especially just talking about getting ahead of guys. Marco Raya has a ridiculous curveball and a ridiculous slider, and he throws like 95. So the fastball velo's there. If he picks that changeup up, which is a decent pitch already, the command thing, and then his size is another thing. He can't do anything about that, not much. But the command thing, if he that's sort of his worst enemy in terms of being a starting pitcher, in my opinion, is he's just not pitch efficient enough a lot of the time. So I think both of those guys have really good goals set. The other thing, switching gears here to the audio-only format. Again, beyond the interview stage at TwinsFest, which is what we were just looking at, the WCCO is also doing interviews with guys off to the side. And this one was with Luke Keaschall, and he revealed a lot about how his offseason is going and how he kind of is looking to 2025. I think we got to look into his personality too. This is a TwinsFest, these interviews that come out, I appreciate too, because we don't always get a chance to hear from all these prospects, and I'm really hammering on a lot of the young guys. And if that's not your interest, again, I encourage you, go, if you want to hear from Pablo or Correa or whatever, go find those, Buxton, whoever. They're out there. Go find them. But these are just sort of the things that stood out to me. And it was interesting also to sort of get some more familiarity with Luke Keaschall. I'll add on that in just a minute.
Man, excited to see you. First time we've met. You've been in the weight room, it looks like.
I always try and get after it in the off season.
An abrupt end. You needed Tommy John surgery on your right throwing arm. So give us an update how that's progressing, if you can.
It's progressed great. Rehab's been nothing but good. We should be back by the beginning of spring training hitting wise. Defensively, I should be able to play second base mid-March. So everything's been smooth up until now. Everything feels great. I'm just excited to get after it.
You've played all around. Speaking of second base, you DH'd a little bit, but you've played all over. Do you have a pretty good read as to where, if the Twins are going to lock you in to one position or another here moving forward?
I don't know what they have in store for me, to be honest. I mean, I'm excited to play wherever they want me to play. I like playing second base, I like playing outfield. If they want me to play first, I'll play first. I'm not picky.
Has there been a big leaguer that you have just kind of leaned on the last couple of days and maybe picked the brain of? A Twins big leaguer around all these guys since you arrived into town?
I was able to work out at the same facility as Griffin Jacks this offseason. He's been a really good help and just a good year to pick from, and he's been a good guy.
Let me read you this scouting report I saw from Baseball America podcast just recently. They were talking about you, and the guy said, very hitterish. Basically hits 300 everywhere he goes. Solid tools across the board. Plus hitter, polished hitter that controls the zone. What do you respond to that?
Feels good. Just try to do damage and get in there and help my team win and find a way on base and just try and hit the ball hard.
So I don't know. Maybe Luke Keaschall was a little tight, a little nervous. I will say most of the other young guys who got interviews were either had other young guys with them, like we saw with Jenkins and such, or like Charlie Soto did an interview, but like Dan Gladden and LaTroy Hawkins were there. So they were kind of doing their usual back and forth, taking some pressure off Soto. But I think, too, though, like this is sort of Luke Keaschall from what I've gathered as well. It's funny that it's on radio and Henry Lake they were in person, of course, at the event, but commenting on how swole Luke Keaschall is. He is incredibly fit. You can tell he works out incredibly hard. And then just how focused Keaschall is just on, hitting the ball hard. I don't know how many times in that interview he mentioned just, I want to hit the ball hard. Put me wherever in the field. I'm going to be ready to go for spring training. He was really hammered on that he's even going to be fielding. That was the big kind of news item here. We knew that they were hoping that he'd be ready for spring training, kind of maybe assuming that was going to be mainly DHing out the gate, but it sounds like at least at some point in spring training, he's going to be able to be fielding. So that's huge. So he's on track, if not better. But this guy's just a machine. And that's how the Twins, I've seen them talk him up as just this workaholic guy who you can give info to and he'll take it and run. And it doesn't surprise me that he's gravitated toward Griffin Jacks, who of course went to the Air Force, because Keaschall, I don't think he has any military in his background, but just the way he kind of carries himself and carried himself in this interview. he kind of feels in that way. I love that the Lake reading out the scouting report and Keaschall just being like, "Oh, that's nice," But that's probably about as much talking as I can do without hacking a lung out. Again, down in the description, there's links. There's so much more out there to dig through and listen to. So if you were out at these events over the weekend, I hope you had a blast. Thanks for checking this one out. I really appreciate you. We'll talk again soon.